When you're looking at equations and you want to solve it, we're going to be using what's called inverse operations, okay? And inverse just means opposite. Um, it's not too hard to figure out what's the opposite of addition. Subtraction. What's the opposite of subtraction? Addition. Opposite of multiplication is division, and the opposite of division is multiplication. So it's not too hard to understand what inverse means. Um, what you're going to have to fight through is this desire to use your massive and impressive brain power um, to avoid using the steps of inverse operations. You're going to say, I know that the answer is 10 because 10 plus 4 equals 14. So Mr. Tate, x equals 10. Fantastic. Um, that'll work for a little bit of time, and then we'll move into equations where there's no way you'll be able to use your brain power to just look at it and go, oh, there's the answer. So instead of starting out with really difficult ones, we're going to start with simple equations, and we're just going to focus on using addition or subtraction to solve them, and they'll start out easy, and then they'll get a little bit more difficult as we go on. Um, Start looking at equations with a mind to pair up every single term of the equation with, is it positive or negative? I know this x is positive. I know the 4 is positive because of that addition sign, and I know that this is positive also, okay? So how can I get this positive 4 away from the x? If we want to solve an equation, we want to get the variable all by itself. So x has plus 4 beside it, so let's just minus 4. Suddenly the equation is not balanced, so I have to do the same to the other side to keep the balance of the equation. We pull our x down because we did absolutely nothing to it. Now here, 4, positive 4 minus 4 becomes 0, so I don't need to write that down. And then 14 minus 4 became 10. And I know it seems like an awful lot of work to figure out that x is 10 when you could just look at it. Well, just bear with me. It'll make more sense as we go. So let's use this. Y minus 10 equals 6.1. Let's add 10 to both sides. Now, I know that's a positive 1y. I know this is a negative 10 because, again, I'm looking at it like this. That's a minus sign, sure, but I'm just calling it a negative 10. What's negative 10 plus 10? 0. And what's 6.1 plus 10? 16.1. And we just move our y down, and hey, we solved the equation. Y equals 16.1. Here we go. M plus 1/3 equals 1/6. So it's basically this idea of if we have a positive 1/3 being added to the M, let's just subtract 1/3 from both sides. Now, that's the same thing as 1/6 minus 1/3. We don't have common denominators, so times this by 2, top and bottom, and we get 2/6. We still have to keep, change, keep, change, change. And 1 plus negative 2 is negative 1. So now I know that M equals negative 1/6. Starting to get a little bit more complicated. Let's take a look at another one. We have the same basic idea that we saw from our very first problem. Let's just call it 5 plus P equals negative 6. If it was 5 plus P equals negative 6, I would say minus 5 and minus 5, so I could get the P all by itself, right? And negative 6 minus 5 is negative 11, right? Hopefully you didn't have to see that done off to the side, but if so, there it is. And so that's how we got P by itself. So basically I've got to get this number away from the P. So since it's negative, I'll add 5.6, and then I add the same to the other side to keep the balance. How do I do mixed signs? Pretty much you just subtract them, right? And then you keep the sign with the number with the greatest absolute value. And here I'll have to borrow So it becomes 0.63, and the negative had the greatest absolute value, so P is going to equal negative 63 hundredths. All of this is starting to come together. All of your use with fractions, all of your use with decimals. You've got to be able to add, you've got to be able to subtract, and on the next lesson you'll have to change the addition and subtraction to multiplication and division. It's hitting now where all of it's starting to come together, and if you have a weakness, these equations will find them very quickly. Go back and take a look at my older videos. Come see me after class, do whatever it takes, but we've got to make sure that you can handle something as easy as negative 6.23 plus 5.6. You've got to know it's negative 0.63 hundredths. If you can't do that, um, the time is now to start looking for extra help.